Here is another vital core language lesson on mastering the basics. And today we're going to be looking at something maybe a lot of you actually know, and that is the subject-verb agreement. Why is it that we say she is a wonderful student instead of she are a wonderful student? Well, that's because our subject and verb in each sentence needs to agree with each other. They need to match one another. And of course, it depends on if our subject is singular or plural, generally speaking, and how we are using the subjects and verbs in our sentences. It may be that some of you are saying, well, David, I have a perfect understanding of the subject-verb agreement. However, I would really suggest making sure you've watched all the video, as there are some interesting exceptions to the rules that you should know too. This is definitely an area of English that I often see students make mistakes in, and it quite clearly points towards they need to work more on overall fluency. So definitely one of these core mastering the basics lessons, and I think it's about time that we jump right in. In English and a lot of other languages, verbs can be used in a variety of ways and forms, such as changing verb form in tense, as we've looked at already. So, when we think about subject and verb agreement, we can also think of it as being singular and plural subject and verb. Usually, we, plural, goes to the beach on holiday, not quite right. Usually we go to the beach on holiday. There we have we, a plural subject, and go, the plural verb. Let's take a look at another example. David are a really cool guy. Now, that just doesn't quite work, does it? And it might not also be true. David is a singular subject, therefore we need a singular verb, whereas are is in fact a plural verb. So what we need to say is David is a really cool guy. There we have our singular subject, David, and our singular verb is. They agree with each other, they match each other, and therefore it's grammatically correct and sounds more fluent. So the big takeaway for this part of the lesson is, more often than not, a singular noun needs a singular verb, whereas a plural noun needs a plural verb. A lot of teachers just teach this rule, but there's a lot of mistakes we can make with this simple equals. And that's where we're going to discuss a few more exceptions to the rule throughout the lesson. But I think it's probably wise that we consider what is singular verbs and plural verbs. Okay, so let's take a look at singular verbs and plural. The dog barks every morning. So there we can see dog is a singular noun. Dogs, with the S being the plural. Singular noun, dog barks every morning. So a singular verb generally has an S at the end of it. In fact, it always has the S. The dog barks every morning. He reads at the library in the town centre. He, one person, reads. Read plus S, singular verb. My car looks like it needs cleaning. So in blue we have car. Looks is our singular verb. So really it's quite different. Nouns in plural form have an S, cars. Verbs in singular form have an S, looks. So it's pretty much the complete opposite in terms of making and forming them. Here are some plural verbs. The pianos appear very expensive. So there we can see our subject, the noun pianos, So we know there are many of them. We know the pianos are plural. Appear, no S. Appear very expensive. That is our plural verb. So we have our plural subject and plural verb. Doctors help the sick and poorly in hospital. And finally, we have local families do a lot of fundraising here. So our plural verb here is do. Okay, so let's move on. Here is an exception to the rule when we use auxiliary verbs, and I mentioned them previously. Auxiliary verbs are used a lot in the English language, very commonly used by native speakers, and we can often call them helping verbs, though the technical name is auxiliary verbs. So here is an example of present tense auxiliary verbs, do and does. Now, when we use do and does, like in the example sentence previous, we need to be careful with our subject-verb agreement, as it's quite easy to make mistakes here. Of course, with do and does, add not to make the statement a negative. Do is plural. This is the plural form. Does is the singular verb form. He does. She does. Plural. They do. We do. Okay, let's take a look at an example. She often sleeps very late. So there we don't have any auxiliary verb added, either the do or the does. What we have is she as the subject, singular subject, and sleeps with the S as the singular verb. Singular subject, singular verb, they match perfect. Now this isn't too hard to make. It's quite easy to form sentences like this. Although I will say again, both in writing and speaking, I see students make simple errors with this so often. So do try and focus on being accurate with subject-verb agreement. She often sleeps very late. Now let's add our auxiliary verb before the main verb sleeps. When we add the auxiliary verb, it will become the main verb of the sentence. So we need to make sure we use the correct plural or singular verb form, either do or does. She do often sleeps very late. Now that sounds clunky. It's not right. She do often sleeps. So we're still using the singular verb form here, very late. Here we go. She does often sleep very late. So here, does is our main verb. We can only have one main verb in the sentence. We have she and does often sleep very late. So all we need to use here is sleep. We don't need to add sleeps. We don't need to use the singular verb form. She does often sleep very late. Here's another example. They sometimes drive to work. Okay, so I'm going to add my auxiliary verb, either do or does, before drive. They does sometimes drive to work. Now, I've got drive correct. That is our plural verb form. We'll always keep it. It's almost like the base verb form. They does sometimes drive to work. Well, that's not quite right. I need the plural, which is do. They do sometimes drive to work. And again, I don't need to change drive. It can remain in that plural base form, drive. So do be careful when using these auxiliary verbs in the present tense, do or does. Also, when we have two singular subjects joined with and, we can make some simple mistakes. So this is where we'll be talking about maybe two people in the same sentence with and to connect them. This is more than two people, so we must make sure that we use the plural verb form. Here's an example. Mum enjoys gardening. Perfect. Dad also enjoys gardening. Now let's link the two subjects together with and. Both Mum and Dad really enjoy gardening in the summer. So two singular subjects, two single subjects, and then we need to use the plural verb form. Here we have enjoy. Instead of the singular, enjoys. Okay, one more exception that I would like to talk about just in this lesson, and that is indefinite pronouns. So indefinite pronouns can be our subjects, and they are words such as, only a short list, nobody, everyone, someone, anybody. These are indefinite pronouns. Everyone likes playing games together. So even though we're talking about lots of people, we need to use the singular verb form likes. Here's another example. Nobody thinks the earth is flat anymore. So even though we're talking about a lot of people, again, we use the singular verb form. Thinks. Nobody thinks the earth is flat anymore. So this really, again, is another exception to the rule of singular subject, singular verb, plural subject, plural verb as well. So it's definitely worth knowing some of these common misconceptions. Okay, so that is just a quick run through of some extra information. I think it's about time that we jump into our animated section of the lesson.